Mysterious Stories.
Number 6. The Lobster Boy, Grady Stiles. Grady Stiles' son told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that I'm not an adorer of my dad as a person. He continued to call his father racist and abusive. On the other hand, Kathy, his daughter, refers to her father as Satan himself. Grady Stiles, also known as the Lobster Boy, was born with a genetic defect that transformed his hands and feet into single pincher claws. The majority of the family is affected by the same genetic disease. Grady's claws appeared to grow to be exceedingly muscular and strong, which, when merged with a callous temper and alcoholism, was a form of ill treatment for his poor family. Despite the fact that he seemed to be friendly enough at the Sideshow attractions where he worked, family members say it was not uncommon for the Lobster Boy to use his claw-like hands to choke people and head-butt them in the stomach no matter when he became angry or upset. On the other hand, the Lobster Boy himself refused to acknowledge this. Instead, it seems that he went on and on about other uses for his wriggling appendages, which he claims the women particularly were fond of. In any case, the family became frightened before his continuous threats, and Grady's wife had had enough. She got in touch with a neighbor and stated that she seemed to be unsafe enough, that something needed doing, and that she had the intention to pay for it. Despite the fact that Grady's wife had intended to have him beaten up and taught a lesson, one night when Grady nipped a cigarette between his claws and drank Seagram's 7 on the sofa, there was a man who broke into his home and shot him multiple times in the head. He has so reviled in the community that few people came to his funeral, and no one offered to be a pallbearer to carry his coffin. 2 praying hands ironically mark his tombstone. It will never be known whether this was carried out on purpose to annoy and taunt him. Number 5. The Running Man. There seems to be not anyone that was on the planet was happier to be stabbed than Arnold Gerrit Henskes, aka Miran Darjo, a European from the Netherlands. He went abroad to live with monks one day in the early 1900s, at least according to his story. When he came back, an incredible new skill had been learned: he could thrust a knife himself without injuring himself. When I say he could stab himself without injury, I'm not referring to a simple horizontal slash across the wrists. No, I mean this guy would use a sword to stab himself and not even shut and open the eyes quickly. After a while, he seemed to convert his name to Miran Darjo and began working. Doctors had to examine him because he was such a medical marvel. Doctors from all over the world carried out a variety of medical tests on him while he repeatedly stuck swords through his body. Despite the fact that they even used an X-ray to ensure that this wasn't one of the world's best optical illusions, it also wasn't a hoax. He could impale himself without dying in some way. Miran Darjo was so sure of his abilities and eager to demonstrate that this was no trick that he urged doctors to run the blade through themselves. It appears that he even said to them to be rougher and less sweet at times. As though that wasn't enough, he once started jogging laps with a sword stuck straight through him. That's correct, he seems to be literally using swords through himself before fleeing. Doctors are baffled as to how he accomplished this feat. The best prediction is that he was likely to make tunnels of scar tissue for the sword to pass through by gradually putting the blade inside himself over time. Despite the fact that other monks can sometimes do something similar, they are able to only use a sword through fatty areas like their arms, never vital organs, pretty much making him certifiably insane. Since 1948, he passed away due to a ruptured heart after a voice in his head said to him to swallow a steel needle. When you already have a proclivity for stabbing yourself, even though the last thing you would like to hear are voices urging you to do more, he did, and there you have it, number 1. Number 4. Schlitzer. In the 1930s, there is a Barnum and Bailey circus that was famous throughout the country for its breathtaking traveling freak shows, and Schlitzer seemed to be one of its main draws. The little person, who stood only 4 feet tall, was caused suffering to a slew of deformities, the most notable of which was his tiny, shrunken head, which was only a fraction of normal size and rose to a pointed tip. His presence was made even stranger when the Barnum and Bailey circus made up its mind to put him on the freak show roster as a girl, billing him first as Maggie, last of the Aztec children, and after that, more renowned, as Schlitzer Surtees the Pinhead. Schlitzer was given a flowery dress and a tuft of hair by them that they pulled back into a girl's ponytail, ribbon and all, for this second persona. It seemed that his legend was mature when he traveled from town to town, frightening and enthralling everyone he met. While Schlitzer's act was not particularly frightening, the medical explanation for his condition is a real cause. He creates the list here on Chills. It is sad that Schlitzer was born with microcephaly, a condition that has recently made headlines due to the Zika virus outbreak in Brazil. It appears that this virus, which is spread by mosquito bites, has caused over 5,000 cases of microcephaly in Brazil alone this year, and many more throughout South America. In severe cases of microcephaly, such as Schlitzer, there is a baby having a brain without a definite form, which can cause seizures as well as problems with motor coordination, vision, and hearing, as well as mental retardation. This condition causes severe mental instability and frequently necessitates lifelong supervision. Having said that, a Zika-infected mosquito did not seem to bite Schlitzer's mother while pregnant. Aside from mosquito bites, other causes of microcephaly include alcoholism and malnutrition during pregnancy, as well as birth complications during the delivery process. However, the prospect of Brazil producing a whole generation of forthcoming Schlitzers is enough to place him at number 6 on this list. Number 3. The Elephant Man. Joseph Merrick was born in 1862. The Elephant Man was not named after the condition known as elephantitis. Opposite of popular trust, his name is not related to his physical appearance. Rather, it is the consequence of a medical diagnosis given to his mother by a doctor after he makes clear that her son was deformed because she was afraid of an elephant while pregnant. This is a true statement. A doctor truly thought that the Elephant Man's appearance was caused by his mother being terrified by a circus elephant while pregnant. It is clear that there is still a lack of medical science at the time. Another common misconception is that Merrick had Proteus syndrome, which is characterized by an overgrowth of skin, bone, and organ tissue throughout the body. It seems that Merrick's deformities are not what put him on this list, it was his sad and lonely life that did. When he was a child, he appeared to be completely normal. After that, at the age of 5, he started to develop horrifying tumors and lesions all over his body and face when the disease took over. His disfigured look so irritated his stepmother that she kicked him out of the house when he was a young boy. His biological father simply stood by and watched. During this time, he tried door-to-door sales while putting on a burlap mask, which went about as well as you'd look forward to. For the poor Elephant Man, things seemed to become worse and worse. Despite the fact that he went to Belgium to work at a freak show, his promoter robbed him and left him for dead. When he returned to London, he had become so grotesque that he almost began a riot just by standing around at the train station. The Elephant Man was not even able to say at this point, and all he had to show authorities was a doctor's business card. Queen Victoria eventually noticed and pitied him, and as a result of her sympathy, he enjoyed a higher quality of life with the upper class. Nonetheless, he became so lonely that he hoped for love at a blind home out of desperation. This never happened. You'd think that someone who had such a difficult life would be able to die peacefully. Despite the fact that the truth is that Merrick passed away in his sleep, probably not in the manner you expected. Despite the fact that Merrick had always slept sitting up, one night he made up his mind to experiment and slept laying down. Unluckily, by this point, his head had become so encrusted with tumors that it was extremely weighty enough to disturb the normal position of his neck while he slept. Was the Elephant Man still sleeping when his neck snapped under the heaviness of his own distorted head, or was he awake and fully aware of the pain? Even though there's no way to know for sure, given all of his previous misfortune, there's no reason to believe that his luck immediately changed for the better in those final few moments. Number 2. Chang and Eng. It looks like that you can have heard of Siamese twins, which are two people who are joined at birth. The term, however, specifically mentions these two brothers, Chang and Ang. The brothers grew up in a remote fishing village in Siam in 1811, now known as Thailand. Except for a massive chunk of flesh linking them at the torso, more specifically at the liver, they were nearly two completely dissociative people. Quote, because of this mutation, it took them their whole lives to confront with chest, with Chang on the left, who was not taller than his brother and appeared to lean in all the time. Despite the fact that they had a slim chance of survival, especially in their tiny village just outside of Bangkok, their mother never quit them. Instead, she urged them to straighten and do morning exercise until they were able to run, swim, and even steer a boat with each other. Unless a British merchant had seen him swimming in the river one day, maybe they would be stuck when putting duck eggs on sale with their mother in Thailand. Despite the fact that he initially mistook them for some kind of animal he'd never seen before, after he encounters them in person, their mother was persuaded to sell them for $500 and bring them back home for sideshows. They toured all over London together and made a lot of money. At one point, top scientists even bought to do the research on him, discovering that Chang could detect when Ang was tickled or ate something, and vice versa. They eventually used the Barnum and Bailey Circus to tour the United States until they had enough money to live on their own as adults. A location in North Carolina is chosen by them, and this is where things become really strange, even for Siamese twins. Chang and Ang were now in their 30s. It was the 18th century, and slavery was still in full swing. Chang and Ang were categorized as white under North Carolina law and could legally be the possessor of slaves, which they did in droves. Yes, despite their own parents sold the twins, they grew up to become well-to-do slave-driving businessmen on a large plantation. They even get married to 2 of their sisters. In reality, Chang and Ang had 21 children between them. Despite the fact that I say that the babies all had the same father, there's a thought. Despite being one of the first recorded cases of conjoined twins is unusual enough, the manner in which Chang and Ang passed away earns them the 5th spot. Chang was 62 years old when he became ill with severe bronchitis. He hadn't felt well in a long time when the 2 of them went to sleep one night as usual. When Ang awoke, he was extremely shocked to discover that a dead body attached to him now. Despite the fact that Ang fought and fought, there was nowhere for him to go. According to medical examiners, he passed away an hour later from fright. Think waking up next to your dead brother, being aware that you'll be next. Number 1. The Egyptian enigma Haji Ali was born in 1800s Egypt and possessed the incredible ability to spit out vast amounts of water, as well as anything else he swallowed. He would frequently swallow quickly entire fishbowls of water or in large mouthfuls and spit them out in high arcs, resembling an elegant human water fountain sculpture. Doesn't that sound intriguing, perhaps even bewitching or, dare I say, lovely? Wrong. Despite the fact that the audience must have been very pleased, clapping and cheering Haji on, there was nothing appealing about what Haji was actually doing. Haji mastered the art of controlled regurgitation. What exactly does this mean? He was puking all over himself. Although the vomit was extremely accurate and precise, he was still using intense stomach spasms to throw the contents of his stomach out of containers and all over people when they shouted for joy and implored for more. Haji could even eject matter from the stomach through the mouth of a gallon of kerosene into a powerful geyser and set it on fire. However, that's not the point. The point is that if the audience had had an idea that Haji's water spouting act actually resembled vomiting, there would have been far more empty seats at his shows. That's disgusting, Haji. Thanks for checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe because I upload a new video every day. Or if you're still not convinced, here are some of my other videos that I think you'd like. Enjoy.